Now, in my last video I talked about how a monastic order or abbey of farm of poets, bards and druids might operate in the natural order. And I also talked about how organisations shouldn't be allowed to own anything. And there's also another category of person who shouldn't really be allowed to own anything, and that is the person who owns more than one house. They don't live in the house that they own. That also shouldn't really be allowed. And that's caused a lot of problems in places like Cornwall, where now these are all Airbnbs and nobody's got anywhere to live. So you can see how our system is collapsing under its own weight, and its weight is one of bad laws, really, or lack of laws. Too many laws against the poor and not enough laws to control the rich. So in the previous video we talked about how you'd still have the fallen order that we have now, but you need these places, abbeys if you like, of beautiful nature where they're kind of the opposite. The people there are all living in natural order, as opposed to the other people in the world living under what they call the rule of law. That's what they live under now, the rule of law. And so we need areas that is free of the rule of law, so that the rule of nature can reign freely. Now, there are certain differences between each of these areas, if you like, and I've sort of written them down here. I've done a little sort of diagram, if you like, of, I don't know if you can see that. Probably want to bring this down a bit. Might be too dark, I don't know. You'll probably be able to see that better. Okay, so we have on the one side, we have responsibility, which is the way of natural order, versus ownership, which is the way of the greed cult that we live in now. Okay, so I'll read out the greed cult first. And okay, so it's ownership, so we own land and property. It's my business, not yours. Keep out. Private security. Sell it, make money. Stay away by order. No visitors allowed. We do whatever we like here by order. Okay, so that is the ownership one. And I've written next to it the contrary. It says the responsibility of poets, bards and druids living in the abbey or monastic situation. They look after the place. They clean up. After they clean up, they look after some more. Everybody's working on improving the place. Visitors welcome. Can never sell, ever, because they don't own it. They're just responsible for it. See, it's in order. So you can see that it's in order. If it's not in order, it's going to have to go back into private ownership. If it's not in order, C, it's in order. It's open to visitors who behave well, well-behaved visitors. And that behaviour will be determined by them, not by their reputation. They'll have to misbehave in the Abbey, or in the Abbey land, to be judged to be not behaving well. Okay. And it's all done under God, so God is the only law in this area. Okay. And the idea, how you behave in natural order is you build and create what you like, as long as it improves things. So as long as it improves things, you build and create what you like. And if it gets a mess, you have to look after it. You have to clean up and look after it, okay? Right, now, in private ownership, you will have a building permit before you put anything up. It has to be according to a certain code. There's no code in natural order. You build what you like. You take a piece of nature, you attach it to another piece of nature, and you've got a house or whatever. And there has to be a fence between these two areas. There has to be a fence, and there has to be a gatekeeper, and that's the only fence in natural order. There are no other fences. The animals walk freely around. Now, this is an experiment worth having. I'm sure everyone would agree with that. Yet, those in ownership will be jealous of this. Oh, why should they get to do what they like when we have to do what we're told? For you to become part of this, all you've got to do is give up all your wealth, give it all away. Give your house, give your land, give your cars, give every penny you've got away, and walk into natural order. That's all you have to do. Okay, so not everybody's going to do this, right? If everybody did this, the whole world could be turned into this and we could get rid of the greed cult forever, right? Yeah, that's not probably, it's not, maybe it'll happen. Stranger things have happened. Look at the Muslim world order, how that took over and became uniform. So we don't know what will happen. As people see the abbeys grow in their midst and they see how much beautiful they are than the rest of the order, then maybe they'll give up the order of, what's it called? The rule of law, the order of the rule of law over everything, and choose to live in natural order under God. Now, originally all these nations, there was one nation under God. You can't really say they're under God anymore because God's will is not done. And God's will is what every individual feels like doing. It's not what somebody says, this is, I know what God's will is and you will do it. That's not God's will. God's will is what people feel like doing. And if it's not God's will, they just won't do it. If you tell somebody to do something, they're not going to do it. Yeah? Now, it may be necessary for the old order to support the new order of natural order. It may be necessary to do that. And in the past it's been the job of the church for the material world, I said the job of church, not job of church, job of the world to look after the church. The dog is barking, and this is the beginning, the root of all evil. Wherever there's money involved, is the root of all evil. how these places will support themselves remains to be seen. It's necessary that it evolves naturally. And if some guaranteed minimum income, some very small amount, probably less than the universal credit, probably less than that, if that is I don't think it's a good idea, yeah, I don't think it's a good idea. Then the fallen world order thinks it owns the church if it's paying it money, paying people money. It wants its pound of flesh, doesn't it? And that is the difficulty, really. And so I'm going to leave it open at this stage and say, in my experience, these communities like this, I've lived in communities in the natural order like this. I've lived in them. They are few and far between. And generally there were some people who had money and others who didn't have money. And the ones who didn't have anything, they were more holy than the ones that did have money. And there was kind of a class distinction, if you like, between the ones who had the money. It wasn't obvious, but you could see there was a certain disdain for the ones that didn't have any money. It was a lack of understanding, even though you're living together, of the natural order of poets, bards and druids. People didn't know their place in that. I didn't know about that. I didn't know their place in that order. And it's important, if people understand their place in the hierarchy on the great chain of being, if people understand their place, they can see it correctly, and then they can give the correct respect to those who are higher than them, who are poorer than them, and serving more than them. There still needs to be ownership of personal items. Still needs to be ownership of personal items. Yet needs to be gifting as well. Is that those worthy of gifts would receive gifts from other members of the community. Arts and crafts people would make stuff, and then they give it to special people that they felt should have it. And so there needs to be more of a gifting economy than a money economy. And if we can get to the stage where a farm becomes self-sufficient, well then there's no question of money, because the farm is self-sufficient and it should generate sufficient excess produce to be able to trade with the world and get what it needs in the way of raw materials it doesn't have on the farm. There should be a way for this to evolve naturally. And there may be some assistance from the world. At the moment, YouTube people are assisted by Patreon and things like that. So we don't know what might happen in the future. We have systems now where people can contribute who have money, who want to see good things done in the world. And so it's possible that that could evolve naturally. It's not my job to demonstrate that. It's simply, my job is to put forward the idea of the system of nature, the system that is nature, and that nature will allow to operate in a natural order. I'm showing you what's required. I know that if any of this ownership stuff comes into here, it's going to destroy the natural order, because it's all unnatural. Yeah? And the main thing in natural order is that people need to be free to do what God wills them to do. Now, if somebody comes into the community who's not under the will of God, says they are, thinks they are, well, it'll become apparent because other people in the community who are under the will of God will find themselves in conflict with them. They'll be doing something and it won't be right what they're doing. They might be messing up more than what they're fixing up. They might be creating heresies by arguing religious dogma or something like that. I don't know. Could be anything. Yet it needs to be sorted out in natural order. That means one man, one lady against another man, another lady, and in the end it's cooperation. And the highest, the abbot if you like, the highest person in the community is simply the one with the most respect. And everybody will know that, who that is. And so there won't be any question of leadership because everybody will know everybody else, know where they fit in the scheme of things. Many attempts at this utopia experiment, if you like, have been tried by God over decades now, all moving forward, all with greater insight into what's required and its greater wisdom of how we might move into such a condition of perfection as would be required to bring back the Garden of Eden. It hasn't been done before, unless you go back into the 10th, 11th, 12th centuries. You won't find this. And even then you'll find error. Because there's the error of the coupleship, okay? There's celibacy, and then there's coupleship. And so it's necessary to get the coupleship teachings correct. And I have a lot of stuff that I brought, my lady and I, about that. And we've spent many, many years learning the laws of the couple and learning who has to be a couple and who cannot be single, who has to be single. And so the bards are all single and the poets are all couples and the druids are all couples. So it starts off single, but it becomes coupleship as you move up in the hierarchy, in the natural order. And so you will find yourself becoming a couple before you become a poet. And having done the poet's journey, you'll then move into, as a couple, into your druid role. The druid is a lawgiver, the lawmaker, the judge, the ultimate judge and leader of the community. The highest druid is the leader of the community. Now, if there's a world, fallen world order to look after as well, then the druid appoints a king over that. And the king's job is the interface between the world and the sacred natural community, the perfection of the garden. And he sits on the fence, if you like, between the two. That's the only purpose of a king, really. he's also a couple, he has a queen too. So he needs to be a couple. He needs to have been a bard and a poet. Possibly not a druid. Possibly not a druid. And that's the meeting house of the guild, poets, bards and druids. That's their meeting house. The greatest remaining meeting house is in Ludlow, which is just down the road here, in the whole kingdom, probably in the world, I would say. The last remaining guild hall. So the poets, bards and druids, they are the guild of philosophers. And every art has its guild. And so the experts in each of the arts become the leaders of these parts of the community. Together they form a natural order for the meeting house to debate the wider issues of the community and to come to decisions about anything that might come up. And everybody should be in agreement if they're all within God. Yet there may be some who are more highly developed minds than others in the community, and it may require those more highly developed minds to convince the less developed minds of the error of their thinking and the better thinking of the more evolved mind. And so there's place for discussion. I wouldn't say argument, but it has to be listening on all sides, yeah. And it shouldn't be argument. Argument is, to disagree is to be disagreeable, yeah. The two is the same word. To disagree and disagreeable. If somebody says something, you shouldn't disagree with them. You should be able to add to what they said, yeah. And if we're disagreeing, there's some fundamental problem there. We're probably mixing up the two worlds for there to be a disagreement. Now, if people have come from the material world, they've got into pretty bad habits, the way people talk to each other, without respect, interrupting, all sorts of things which the indigenous peoples wouldn't have stood for. And that's why they said the white man speaks with a forked tongue, because he's all making all sorts of mistakes, yeah, with his speaking. And to speak in the meeting house requires that you are able to speak without a forked tongue. So the words need to flow from the lips. And when they stop flowing from the lips, or if you say, you know, or but is a swear word, or any swear word. And if you say you know, it's necessary to shut up straight away and just say, you know, I rest my case. When we understand all this, we'll be able to work together. Working together is the motto. Working together is the motto. So We have working together. And we have competition. Okay, working together, competition. They're two opposites, really. And there's nothing to compete about. It's only if you've got an ego that you want to compete. And those without an ego are quite happy to live and enjoy the eternal now, life in the eternal now. Thanks for watching.